Mark Carney doesn't know it yet, but most of his globalist policy ideas and plans for Canada will be directly blocked by Donald Trump. The small portion of Carney's platform that survives the encounter with Trump's trade team will be a handful of Trudeau policies: net zero, immigration, woke and DEI policies, and expanded trade with Europe and Asia. We have 10 years' experience with these Trudeau policies, and 3 out of 4 have caused the Canadian standard of living to go down. Trump's new policies will amplify the damage this Carney platform does to Canada by accelerating capital flight from Canada to the US. Carney thinks this fight is about trade and about saving net zero from Trump's petroleum-based economy, but the Trump team has a smart, winning plan to block Carney's globalist policies. We can see in the 24 election campaign and for years before then that Trump has 2 main aims: block the Chinese communists and block the globalists. The globalists and the communists share a goal of American decline as the world superpower and Chinese ascendancy to world superpower. Trump is saying we can reverse American decline and outcompete every country in the world if we compete on a fair playing field, and we stop subsidizing our socialist rivals. The Trump team has 3 big bargaining tools they're ready to use. First, access to the US market, the most lucrative consumer market in the world. Second, U.S. Navy protection of world commerce. The U.S. Navy protects every merchant vessel in the world. Third, U.S.-led military alliances and security agreements like NATO and NORAD and individual country agreements that happen all around the world. Any one of these tools is enough to make any country cave to a U.S. demand. If you're Canada and you lose access to the U.S. market, 20% of your economy disappears overnight. If you're Germany and the US Navy stops guaranteeing the safety of your commercial shipping, your shipping costs have just increased tenfold instantly. You no longer have access to the world market and can only trade with your immediate neighbors. These are the same 3 tools that the Americans used at the end of WW2 to set up the current world order. Back then, the US told the world, join our alliance against the Soviets and their global revolution aims, and we will hand you everything you were fighting for in WW2. We'll get you access to resources and to export markets. We'll include access to the US market tariff-free. It was guaranteed prosperity for any country that could ship a good product. Today, Trump is using the same 3 tools, trade agreements, naval protection, and military alliances, to restructure the world order. Why is he doing this? Because that global alliance has shifted from blocking Soviet expansion to supporting globalist aims, including American decline as the world superpower and the Chinese rise as a superpower. The Trump team does have a smart, detailed plan for blocking most of Mark Carney's wish list, and the coming trade deal is the core of that plan. When that deal is signed, what's left that Carney can do? Net zero, Carney's life mission, launching green alternatives to the U.S. fossil fuel-based economy. Carney's ideas and plans here are well known. He's been promoting them for years. He has a series of sticks and carrots for promoting the green economy. Carney's ideas for a green economy launch include oil and gas emissions and production caps, an industrial carbon tax, blocking new oil and gas and high carbon emitting industry, EV mandates, green jet fuel mandates, subsidies for producers like wind, solar, battery storage, EV battery production, EV parts production, electric home heat pumps, subsidies for green tech research and development like hydrogen, batteries, solid-state batteries, smart grid AI, carbon capture and storage. Net zero policy outcomes? First, Quebec has promised to block Alberta's Energy East pipeline.
And I can assure you that even without our strong opposition to that project, they cannot put on the table a viable project about what was previously called Energy Est.
That's Quebec saying no again to the Energy East pipeline. Mark Carney will not repeal the Bill C-69, the pipeline blocking bill.
Do you plan to repeal Bill C-69?
We do not plan to repeal Bill
And something that my government is going to do is to use all of the powers of the federal government, including the emergency powers of the federal government, to accelerate the major projects that we need in order to build this economy and take on the Americans.
Mais donc, vous n'imposeriez jamais un pipeline au Québec ou à d'autres provinces?
N'imposerai jamais.
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 Si une province dit non, vous ne passez pas de tuyau.
Ouais, absolument.
Vous n'imposez
jamais
pas.
au Québec.
And Carney promising to never impose a pipeline in Quebec. That means there will be no Energy East pipeline. If the pipeline projects are blocked, Alberta will have a referendum. 6 months after the election, if Carney won't meet Alberta's 9 demands, including Bill C-69 repealed and pipelines approved, no oil and gas production or emissions caps, and no industrial carbon tax, then Premier Smith will ask Albertans if they want a referendum. We'll see large deficits to fund the green economy launch, and with that, higher taxes and likely more regulation. Those taxes and regulations will lead to capital flight to the U.S. as companies and investors see that it's easier and cheaper to launch a business or an investment in the U.S. So you won't see any objection from Trump over this plan because it benefits the U.S. very directly. That Canadian green tech tax money will land in corporate pockets. We have a cluster of recent experiences of tax money going to green tech in Canada. To attract EV production, we spent $270 million in subsidies to the Northvolt EV battery plant, bankrupt. $976 million to the Umicore EV battery plant, halted. $600 million to the Ford EV plant, canceled and switched to gasoline vehicle production. $518 million to the BrightDrop EV plant, halted. Governments have a terrible, terrible record at picking winners in the market. Say the government lucks out and picks a winner. If that money is for research and development, the money will still land in corporate pockets. Green tech R&D doesn't go to average Joes in the street. It goes to established companies that have advanced technology in the field you're doing research in. Those are the people capable of doing that. That R&D, even if it's successful, becomes the private property of that company. Their data and their computer and AI systems, which all modern companies are working from now, becomes their proprietary private property. So any investment Canada makes in this R&D doesn't become an investment in Canada. It becomes an investment that's given to that corporation. That's true for solar R&D, for wind, for batteries, for hydrogen, for carbon capture and storage. Any R&D that's successful becomes the intellectual property of that company, and most of those companies are foreign, so there's no way to say that that's an investment in Canada. The net zero policy outcomes for Carney will likely be an Alberta referendum, large deficits, tax-funded corporate welfare, and subsidized green tech being blocked by the U.S. trade deal, so not for sale in the USA. Carney said he'll fix immigration, but no numbers and no plan details. The strongest signal we have for what he'll do is that he's added both co-founders of the Century Initiative to his team, Dominic Barton and Mark Weissman. My read on that is that he will continue pursuing massive immigration numbers, with a Century Initiative target of approximately 775,000 net immigrants a year. Mark Carney's tag team of Century Initiative founders, Mark Weissman and Dominic Barton, will be calling for 775,000 net immigration per year in Canada. Here is Canada's recent experience with Century Initiative immigration levels. You can see housing starts in orange and population growth in blue. Here is GDP per worker in dark blue and population growth in light blue. The Century Initiative immigration surge is dropping our standard of living. This one is a Danish violent crime chart separated by ancestry. I don't think Statistics Canada dares to measure this, and that's why I'm showing a Danish chart, because they did measure it. You see Danish on the left, Western immigrants in the middle, and non-Western immigrants on the right. There could be any number of reasons for the different crime rates. That won't change that violent crime rates go up with massive unskilled immigration. Massive unskilled immigration outcomes will be a housing crisis that worsens, a healthcare load that worsens, a standard of living that drops, and crime rate that's increasing. DEI policies and woke ideas are core globalist policies of the Trudeau Liberals and NDP that we can expect Mark Carney to continue.
While America engages in a war on woke, Canadians will continue to value inclusiveness.
For the continuing woke policies, we'll see DEI, gender ideology, criminal reform, that is catch and release, online harms and misinformation and censorship laws, all of which will be blocked by the U.S. trade deal, and a pro-Hamas and anti-Israel policy. The heroic drop in crime rates we were seeing in modern times made a dramatic reversal with the advent of the Trudeau Liberals. Chanting from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea, Palestine will be free, is actually calling to finish the job that a small mustached man in Europe started in the 1930s. And that is a prosecutable hate crime in Canada, but under woke policies, we'll continue to see nothing done about that. For outcomes of woke policies, we'll see violent crime continues to rise and anti-Semitism increasing. Seeking trade outside the U.S. is a good thing, but Carney's idea that a carbon tax is the price of entry to increase trade with the EU, UK, and emerging Asia, the biggest effect that will have is to make our products more expensive and less competitive in the US market, and we will lose more US sales and export sales than we will gain in Europe and Asia.
Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the European Union? Guess what one of the requirements is to diversify trade to the United Kingdom? Guess what one of the requirements will be to diversify trade to emerging Asia? Is to have a form of price on carbon.
Boosting trade with Europe and Asia, this is smart policy if you don't include the carbon tax. Europe can add their own carbon tax at import if they want. To wrap up, if Carney is elected, Trump will dictate terms to him in a new agreement, and Carney's freedom of action will be very restricted. His policies that survive a Trump trade deal will look like Trudeau 2.0, but with American handcuffs on. The Canadian economy will weaken, and over the next 5 years, the population will develop a generation-long allergy to the Liberal Party of Canada and to their legacy media allies. If you'd like to see Trump's larger plan for defeating the globalists and a step-by-step breakdown of how Carney will lose in that fight, click this next video, Why Carney Can't Win Against Trump.